Welcome to At Issue. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm H. Wayne Wilson. For the next half hour, we're going to have to talk about a lot of critical issues facing the city of Peoria. But those issues also impact the entire Central Illinois area, because as the core city goes, so does the area go. And to have that discussion, we have the city manager of the city of Peoria, Patrick Urich. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, H. Glad to be here.
And the mayor of the city of Peoria, Jim Ardis. Thank you for being here.
Hi, H.
This won't surprise you. We have to talk about the Pere Marquette and the Marriott project. You've been on the show several times, and we've probably led the show every time with this. There was a delay at the end of January for another month. Has a closing date been set?
We don't have a date specific, H, but I think hopefully the city manager would agree with me that within the next 30 days, the bonds will be sold and the closing will have taken place.
And the city sells the bonds, $32.5 million?
$32.5 million.
And correct. You originally thought you might be able to lessen that load by taking some money from the Southtown TIF district. Because the hotel project is adjacent to the TIF district, you can legally do that. You ran into a little unexpected opposition. What happened there?
Well, going back to November, when we presented the financial analysis as the redevelopment agreement was being adopted, we talked about the fact that we could save hundreds of thousands of dollars of interest costs annually if we were able to not capitalize the interest, if we could find some funds available to only issue $29.5 million worth of bonds versus $32.5 million. And we presented as one option to the council that we look at capitalizing the interest and not capitalizing the interest and using the Southtown TIF proceeds that are currently in the bank that are available for us or for purposes to be used in Southtown and transport that over to the adjacent TIF, which is the Hospitality Improvement Zone TIF that we currently have, and use those funds there. When we presented that recommendation, members of the community came out in the Southtown area, residents that live in Spring Grove in the subdivision there, and other residents that were concerned that those funds should remain within the Southtown area. Following that meeting, the council decided not to capitalize the interest or use the Southtown funds for that. We had a public meeting at which we talked about what the TIF is responsible for. We talked about what potential uses could come up or could be used from the Southtown TIF proceeds. As we went through that process and we talked about it at that point in time, the public came up with a number of suggestions, and we're working to try and refine that, to put another report back to the council to say, here's what some eligible expenses or eligible projects we may have that we could utilize the Southtown TIF funds for.
With the sale of the bonds, assuming that takes place sometime, let's say April, when will we see, and maybe it's going to be internally we see some work, but when will work start?
It won't be April. It'll be sooner than April. Those bonds okay. Will be sold by the end of the month, at the very beginning of March. We would anticipate to see movement very quickly. The developer has told us that they'll begin to demolition on the parking deck right away, and of course the refurbishment of the Pere Marquette will happen before the building of the new hotel, so that will start very quickly.
Let's change to a different construction area, and that is Washington Street, which the core street through the warehouse district. You also had some discussions about using some Southtown TIF money to help match the Tiger II grant of $10 million. That's not going to happen?
No, we have the first phase of the project is the state-funded Washington Street improvements, and construction on the Harrison Street roundabout, the intersection of Harrison and Washington Street, would be beginning in the first phase of that construction would begin hopefully in June. More likely July is when we would start to see construction occurring in that area there. And that'll work its way south through the warehouse district is the way that we would start the construction. That was the direction that council gave us. That's the direction that we're going to be moving. The Tiger II funds are $10 million that we received from the federal government, and we have to match that with funds, and we need to find $3.4 million to match that $10 million from the federal government. One of the suggestions, and we made this at the public meeting in Southtown when we talked about it, is that we could potentially use the Southtown funds as a local match. we're estimating that Southtown there's going to be $9 million available. This is immediately adjacent. The infrastructure improvements that we're talking about are Jefferson Street, Adams Street. We're talking about then the side streets, Persimmon, Oak, looking at all of those side streets that we have in that area. This is the neighborhood that is immediately adjacent to Southtown. So there, in this regard, I think that there is some opportunity that we could look at, that this may be a potential to match those funds because of the infrastructure improvements that we have. When the projects were talked about in Southtown, people mentioned that they'd like to see more commercial activities on Jefferson Street. Well, Jefferson Street is really on the border between the Southtown TIF and between the warehouse district TIF.
So using $3.4 million still is a possibility.
It's still a possibility
for that matching. And if that match doesn't come from the TIF money, where might it come from, Mayor?
Well, that's why we have a high-paid city manager to go in and look at our budget and see where we could potentially.
It's going to have to come out of the budget, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. We're not going to pull it out of the sky. We'll have to tweak something. There may be areas that we can accommodate some of the things in Southtown. If we had capital dollars devoted to those, we might be able to supplant them with TIF dollars or something else.
Now, this, of course, is federal money and public money. Has there been interest since the discussion of renovating Washington and the side streets? Has there been private interest in renovating some of the buildings in the warehouse district?
We have. We've had a couple different groups of developers that are looking. As a matter of fact, some of the buildings down here have options that have been placed on them since all this work has taken place. And really right now, I think we're in a position where we're waiting to see some announcements made. There have been some properties optioned. I think they will be closed in terms of signing on the dotted line, and I think that the people are going to start seeing the private investors coming in now that we've shown that we're going to get a lot of this infrastructure taken care of.
You probably can't mention a specific name, but can you tell me what kind of businesses are we talking about?
In general, these developers are looking at having some type of either commercial, retail business element on the actual street surface side, and a lot of them want to have some type of a residential component above, which is exactly what we've been gearing for, is business focused on the first level with residential opportunities up above. Some of them are looking at bigger projects. Some of them may see the buildings go away to make way for what they want to do, but we're seeing the interest in the type of business that we wanted to see.
One more discussion about the Southtown TIF. It expires next year.
That's correct.
$9 million, as you mentioned. Have any decisions been made as to how you might spend whatever amount you're going to spend of that $9 million in Southtown? Where might you spend it?
No, and that's where our next steps are, is that we're working with a smaller working group. Councilman Clyde Gully has asked that we work with a smaller working group of interested citizens and community leaders in that area. And we're working with those individuals. We've got a meeting that will be occurring Friday, and we're going to be talking with them about what we can do to try and put some dollars and cents behind some of the potential projects that may be eligible for funding, and then bring back a report that was refined to say, here's the potential projects, here's the potential cash outlay for those projects, and have the council look at that and make some decisions about where they want to go.
We've been talking about downtown and the south end of the city. Let's go up north for just a moment, and I'm not sure I know the differences between the Tiger grants, but I think it's a Tiger 4 grant for the extension of Pioneer Parkway. What's the status of that? Is that a matching also?
There will be a match as well. And the Tiger 4 grant is a grant that was just announced that the Transportation Department is putting out requests for. And the council has made a decision that we're going to try to get funding to begin work on the Pioneer Park extension, which we all know is going to be a very expensive project. I think the total price tag $60–70 million now. We don't expect to get all of that, but we are going to try to apply for a grant to begin that moving. That's not the Pioneer Park extension is not just for the businesses in that area, but there's a huge potential for new residential development in that area that will also be assisted by the extension.
The Peoria Area Convention Visitors Bureau has gone through a number of leaders. The CEO who had just resigned, Bob Marks. Before him, it was Brent Lontine, Keith Arnold, Powell, Steve Powell. And so there isn't a lot of stability there. While that is not a department of the city, and you have no hiring or firing over that position, it certainly has an impact on you from the standpoint of you fund a vast majority of the budget of that CVB. You're looking, the city is looking at cutting that amount by a significant percentage. Why are you cutting it, and are you concerned about the viability of the CVB as an organization that can bring tourism to the city?
Well, maybe I'll answer the last question first, H. Is, Cheryl West is the acting CEO, and Cheryl is a retired Caterpillar administrator and an outstanding one at that. So I think I can speak for the manager and I and both say we have a lot of confidence in her ability to rudder that ship while we're in this position. In the course of the budget discussions last year, we looked at everything, and one of the areas that we looked at was the amount of money that we're contributing to the Convention Visitors Bureau, over $700,000 a year, and trying to determine what the return on that investment was. So what we're trying to do is work through a process and saying is putting that whole chunk of money with the Bureau the best way to actually utilize those dollars, or is there another way that we can not only market the area better, but do a better job of selling the Civic Center and our downtown hotels to convention-related business? So that's kind of the process that we're working for. We haven't made a decision yet. We know there's huge value in having a Convention and Visitors Bureau to our city, but what we're trying to do for Peoria and the Peoria taxpayers is finding the best way to utilize those dollars to not just market our area and get people here, but to actually sell what we have. We've spent millions of dollars on our Civic Center. We want groups to come in and utilize it.
Because communities outside of Peoria contribute to this in lesser amounts. Have you had discussions with the leaders of those communities, East Peoria, Washington?
Well, it kind of gets back to your opening question, is that's not really our position to go in and talk with those other cities about contributing more. I really think that's something that the Bureau needs to do. The Bureau needs to go out there and sell them on the value of the investment. We have a report coming out that the city manager has done a really good job putting together, identifying how other communities fund their bureaus, and it's definitely a lot different. I mean, right now Peoria is the major funder, and there's not a solution out there or a formula out there that other communities contribute X amount. It's basically, what do you feel like contributing, and that's what they put in. So it would probably be helpful for the Bureau to be able to go out and sell the Bureau and ask for a formula that would work for everybody.
Let's talk about privatization. Dropping the dollar amount from $720,000 to the CVB to about $275,000, if that's what the council decides, would save the budget some money, and you've laid off, well, I think it ended up being 15 because of attrition, but you laid off 52 positions. The budget has been a tough road for you. Is privatization something you're looking at, and how might that save money for the city?
Well, let me first say I don't think we're looking at trying to save money with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We made a recommendation in the budget to reduce the funding to $275,000, but we also said that we needed to repurpose those funds in order to market the Civic Center and to market Peoria specifically. So that's the first point.
Just for clarification, that means that the difference between 720 and 275, math is failing me quickly, would be still dedicated to convention, tourism, those kinds of events. That's not going to be redirected to police, fire, public safety.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
I mean, and I think that you have to look at it as the difference between marketing and trying to sell the people on the region, or at least marketing the region, and then looking at sales and trying to get events into the Civic Center and trying to make sure that we're maximizing the number of event days at the Civic Center, which the public has invested millions of dollars in terms of that investment. So I think that's the way that we're trying to at least look at that initially. But having said that, moving into the privatization piece, I want to talk about that in terms of the restructuring. We went through a process within the organization where we opened up an early retirement incentive window. We had a number of positions that were slated for a reduction in force. We ended up seeing about 15 positions that were actually laid off during the course of the last year, and then the rest are positions that took the early retirement. The total is going to be more than 50 positions that we've seen leave the organization. We currently have received bid results back from the engineering community. We sent out a request for proposals, a request for qualifications for engineering firms to do a number of projects for us, and to looking at how we might be able to use the ample private resources that we have in the community and the engineering expertise that we have in the community to help us to deliver those services. So that's one area where in years past we may have had 14 to 18 people in our engineering program. We're going to have 7. So we've looked at trying to reduce that number down and to live within a smaller workforce, and then using the private sector to help us. We may also look, and we talked about it in the budget process, at building inspection services, maybe another area where we look at what the private sector has done. After Hurricane Katrina, the state of Louisiana went through a process of trying to find building inspectors, and they had a not-for-profit was established from a number of different a number of different organizations to establish an outsourced building inspections function. There are other private companies in the Chicago area and other communities that have done this. So we may look at the private sector there as well.
Might sharing with Peoria County or another entity fall into this category?
Absolutely. I think when you look at shared services and the ability of working with other governments to provide services, that's where you can see that there may be opportunities there for us to work.
Economic development?
Economic development may be one. Over the course of the years, we've had a contract and a relationship with the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation of Central Illinois, to provide services for us, and really looking at that in the large marketing and very similar to the CVB, providing marketing services for the region for economic development purposes. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the decisions on development have to come back to the City Council for approval. But what we're trying to do there, I think, and what we'll see is that we're going to look at some areas specifically. We have a revolving loan program that we have, and we're going to have to find someone to manage that program for us. When I was at the county, the county utilized the services of the EDC to manage that program, so that might be a good fit there. Another area would be business retention visits. If we can look at business retention visits, there may be some other opportunities that we have to work with another entity. And then the marketing piece, because we really don't have the internal staff capacity to provide that marketing expertise.
In your State of the City address in late January, you talked about smart population growth, amongst many things, but smart population growth. And you indicated that you wanted people to make a choice to live in Peoria. And we all know that school districts have impact on that, a huge impact. How encouraged are you by the changes, especially the changes in vocational education at District 150? Are you encouraged by that?
Well, I think that was a very important decision that the District 150 board made to go back in that direction. Clearly, there's not every student that graduates from District 150 is going to go on to college and pursue a career in that, or any district. So I'm very encouraged by that. I think that we're already seeing good results of the levels of participation down at Woodruff and the vocational academies that they have down there, and I think it's very important to have that as a choice in the school.
A lot of headlines regarding Caterpillar deciding to eventually go to Georgia. Mm-hmm. The county of Peoria made a presentation to have a plant here. Galesburg did. It brings up the topic of the business environment in the state of Illinois. What is your assessment of the business climate as it impacts the immediate areas, the area surrounding Peoria?
I think that the challenge that we see with the business climate and the structure of our business climate in Illinois is that with a state that is so reliant on property taxes to fund local government services, many times if companies are looking to locate in a region, when they take a look at that property tax at first, and I think everyone, companies included, love to hate the property tax. It's one of those taxes that people just don't like. That tends to be that first impression, and that many companies just simply shut down because of that. And we're very reliant on property taxes in Illinois. But having said that, we don't have a personal property tax like many other states have. Until recently, our income tax was very low.
That's not the case anymore.
Not the case any longer. So I think that's helped in terms of looking at that. When you look at our total tax burden, we're not as nearly as high. But that initial step is a challenge. And then I think that just overall, with the rest of the business climate in terms of the ability to get things done, we talked in our legislative program about the fact that number one, we've got enterprise zones that the city has used to great success throughout the city that are coming close to expiring, and that we need to see those enterprise zones expanded and to look at how we can use them again. Secondly, is the fact that when we look at working with the State Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, their tools in their toolbox are really only 3 items, and they have very few items for them to utilize to help in terms of delivering incentives to companies to locate in the communities. And in many other states, they have been much more flexible and much more nimble about the ability to grant the state government the ability to help to bring businesses to your community. And I think that's some of the things that we need to see changed.
Let's talk about state impact on municipalities. In your State of the City address, you talked about pension. The city's contribution to the pension fund grew 144% in an 8-year period of time. That's unsustainable. What kind of traction have you gotten in your discussions with legislators in Springfield?
Well, they clearly acknowledge that it's not sustainable, but there's not a willingness for them to engage in the discussions necessary to address that, which is concerning to us. The local elected officials get beat up quite often about the pension costs that we have, but we have absolutely no ability. Those aren't negotiated. Those are all established down in Springfield. So it's really frustrating for us to have those parameters established in Springfield, and we have to pay for them, similar to what they're talking about doing with sharing pensions for the teachers. So what Springfield really has to, we've made a lot of tough decisions in Peoria over the last 5 or 6 years with the budget situations being what they are. Springfield has to do the same thing, and nobody's saying it's going to be easy. But the Tribune did a series of articles at the end of the year about our state and the difficulty that this state is having to not only retain the employers that they have, but attracting new employers to the state. The title of the series was "Illinois is the Deadbeat State," because we're not paying our bills and we're taxing employers out of our state. What they have to do is understand the importance of this, and not just on the big guys like Caterpillar. The majority of our employers in this state, like everywhere else, are small business, and they're just making it incredibly hard for people to do business, especially those that are reliant on being recompensated from the state because they're not paying their bills on time.
I don't hear a lot of confidence in your tone of voice.
Well, look, this didn't happen in the last year or two. This has been decades of everybody's tired of the term kicking the can down the road, but they kick the can down the road as far as it can possibly go. We need to address it. We need to start paying our bills. I'm hoping that with all of the legislators that are up for election in Springfield this time around, I think that they've guesstimated there may be 40% of the legislators may be brand new. So maybe they'll take that more business sense in there to make these very tough decisions to start digging us out of the hole that we're in.
A final question for you, Patrick. A lot of cutbacks. The city has gone from 850 or so employees to fewer than 650 now, right?
About 659. Yes.
659. So have you faced any difficulties with the ability to deliver services to the public because of the cutbacks? You've been able to balance the budget, but is there a drawback on the other side.
Yes, there absolutely is. You can't expect to continue to do and deliver the same level of service at the same way that you had always done it without making changes when you have, in some instances, a third to two-thirds fewer staff than you had before in some departments. So we have to make sure that we're working with the departments as we go through this restructuring process this year to try and look at our business processes and look at how we can change those processes. What are we doing within that process that's adding value or that is designed to help to meet the intended purpose, and to clear away all the stuff that isn't providing any of that value so that we could get down to the important points. And in that instance, those are the pieces that we've got to really focus on, and that's where we'll be paying our attention during the course of 2012. It's a transition year.
And then you'll face another budget crunch for 2013.
Hopefully not.
Patrick Urich, City Manager for the City of Peoria, thank you for joining us on At Issue.
Thank you.
And as always, Mayor Jim Ardis of the City of Peoria, thank you.
Thanks, H.
And we thank you for joining us as well. We're going to take the next, I think, 3 weeks off here at Issue, and we're going to see you in 4 weeks with another city discussion. This time, the leaders of the City of Galesburg will be joining us. Mayor Sal Garza and others will be on the next At Issue in a month. Thanks for joining us.